Chapter 30, the Gospel according to John. But little light can be thrown upon the Gospel of John by any comparison with the manuscripts of Luke. The first manuscript to which any similarity can be found is number 19, the account of the feeding of the multitude by a miracle. But the differences in the narratives are very great. According to all the synoptics, Jesus had retired to a desert place. In Luke, it is stated that it belonged to the city of Bethsaida. According to John, he had gone up into a mountain. According to this historian, it was on the eve of a Jewish Passover. This, the synoptics say nothing about, nor do they connect Jesus with any Passover except the one at which he suffered. According to Mark and Matthew, who continue the narrative, Jesus sent away the multitudes and retired into a mountain to pray. According to John, he departed into a mountain, though he was already in a mountain, to avoid the multitude who wished to take him by force and make him a king. It will be remembered that this manuscript could not be fully identified in Mark. These were probably different versions of a common tradition. The essential features of the tradition were that a multitude consisting of 5,000 men, besides the women and children, had been fed by Christ upon 5 loaves and 2 fishes. The next parable is number 30. Of the contents of this long manuscript, there is but the circumstance of Jesus riding on a colt, the foal of an ass, which is briefly noticed as the fulfillment of a prophecy. This manuscript also could not be recognized distinctly in Mark, and there is no reason to believe it was used in John. Number 32, Luke 22, 1-23, and 49. Portions of this MS have partial parallels in John 13, 1-30, verse 36-38, chapter 18, verse 1-18, 24-28, 33-40, chapter 19, verse 15-25, and 28-30. Number 33, Luke 23, 50 to the end. The first part of this manuscript, narrating the begging of the body of Jesus and his burial by Joseph of Arimathea, had a closer parallel in John than any of the previous ones, John 19, 38-42. The balance of it, however, after the coming of Mary Magdalene to the sepulchre, cannot be recognized. Thus, it will be seen that not a single manuscript in Luke can be completely traced in John. In some instances, the writer may have used Luke or Mark. The inference is that Luke and John were not composed from common sources. The same result will follow upon comparing John with Mark and Matthew. The Gospel of John stands alone. It has every mark of being an original gospel, while the synoptics are compilations made, for the most part, for the purpose of preserving the early traditions of the disciples concerning the life and teachings, the sufferings, the death, and the resurrection of Jesus. The Gospel of John is a theological document written for theological purposes. The first express testimony to the existence of this gospel is that of Theophilus, Bishop of Antioch, AD 180, who speaks of it thus. And hence the Holy Writings teach us and all the Spirit-bearing, inspired men, one of whom, John says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, etc. Here, John is not spoken of as an apostle, but as a spirit-bearing or inspired man. Such the writer may have considered John the presbyter of the 2nd century, who is by many thought to be the author of the gospel. The internal character of this gospel is quite inconsistent with the theory of it having been written by the unlettered fisherman, the son of Zebedee. It is hardly possible that such a person could have become the educated and philosophical theologian whose pen is to be traced in the Gospel of John. It is written in purer and less Hebreistic Greek than the other Gospels, and its style is elegant and graceful. John the Apostle, son of Zebedee, was a Jew, but the author of the Gospel of John refers to the Jews in the third person. He speaks of the feasts of the Jews, the Passover of the Jews, the manner of the purifying of the Jews, etc. The law of Moses is spoken of as your law and their law. Furthermore, the Jews are denounced as the children of the devil. The fact that this gospel, the full and absolute divinity of Christ, is first distinctly taught is evidence also that it was not written by a Jew. The divinity of Jesus was not a doctrine of the Jewish Christians. It originated with Gentiles, formerly idolaters. To the Jew, it meant polytheism. The early Jewish Christians held Christ to be a man only. There are also many errors in reference to the geography of the country. The author speaks of Enon, near to Salem in Judea, also of Bethany beyond Jordan, and of a city of Samaria called Sychar. If there were any such places, they were strangely unknown to the writers. The learned Dr. Bert Schneider points out such mistakes and errors of the geography, chronology, history, and statistics of Judea as no person who had ever resided in that country or had been by birth a Jew could possibly have committed. Even the birthplace of John himself, Bethsaida or Julius, is assigned to Galilee when it was situated in another country. This mistake alone is fatal to the authority of the gospel. This is conceded by Hugh, provided it cannot be explained. An attempt has been made to explain it by showing that it was the custom of the people to speak of the Gaulonite country as Galilee. Josephus is cited as calling Judas the Galilean or Gaulonite. Josephus 4 times refers to Judas as a Galilean. The only place where he is spoken of otherwise is manifestly a mistake on the part of some transcriber and arose from the fact that there were two cities by the name of Gamala, one in Gaulonitis, the other in Galilee. No doubt the passage in Josephus, a Gaulonite of a city whose name was Gamala, should read a Galilean of a city whose name was Gamala. It would then correspond with the other passages in Josephus and with the Acts of the Apostles, 5:37, in all of which he was called Judas of Galilee. Galilee was a well-known district of a country, country, with well-defined boundaries, and it is absurd to suppose that another country entirely disconnected with it was called Galilee without further evidence than this passage of Josephus. The conclusion is that the author of the Gospel of John was ignorant of the birthplace of John the Apostle. This gospel differs from all three of the synoptics in relating several events which occurred when John the Apostle was not present, while, strangely enough, other transactions in which, according to the synoptics, the Apostle John was present are not related in the Gospel of John at all, particularly the Transfiguration, which, according to all the synoptics, took place in the presence of Peter, James, and John. That John had neglected to testify where his testimony would naturally be expected was noticed very anciently by Faustus the Manichaean in his controversy with Augustine. Speaking of the passage, think not that I am come, etc. Matt 17, he says, who testifies that Jesus said this? Matthew. Where did he say it? On the mountain. Who were present? Peter, Andrew, James, and John. Others, but not Matthew himself. He had not as yet chosen Matthew, but one of these four, John, wrote a gospel. Well, then, he relates this somewhere. No, not at all. How is it, then, that John, who was on the mountain, does not testify, and that this was written by Matthew, who becomes a follower of Jesus some time after he descended from the mountain? It is therefore very doubtful whether Jesus said this, because a proper witness is silent while an improper witness testifies. The writer of this gospel quotes the Old Testament prophecies almost as loosely and with as little regard to their applicability as the author of Matthew. Psalms 41:9, quoted in John 13:18, did not refer to Christ nor to Judas, so of John 17:12. So strong is the evidence of a late date to this gospel that its apostolic origin is being abandoned by the ablest evangelical writers. Westcott says the earliest account of the origin of the gospel is already legendary. Dr. Davidson, author of the article on the canon in the new edition of the Encyclopedia Britannica, says its Johannine authorship must be abandoned, and its existence prior to AD 140 cannot be maintained. Both Irenaeus and Jerome assert that John wrote against Cerinthus. Cerinthus flourished about AD 145. Again, there is evidence that in the construction of this gospel, as in that of Matthew, the author had in view the building up of the Roman hierarchy, the foundations of which were then about AD 177-8 being laid. In the 21st chapter is a detailed account of the appearance of Jesus after his resurrection to 7 of his disciples at the Sea of Tiberias, something not heard of in the Synoptic Gospels, and which bears the impress of an original narrative suggested by scenes in Christ's ministry. After they had dined, Jesus is made to say to Peter, "Feed my sheep," an injunction which was afterward repeated. In Matthew only is Peter made the rock on which the church was to be built, and in John only he enjoined to feed the sheep of Christ. There is reason to believe that both Gospels were written in the interest of the supremacy of the Church of Rome.